Last week, as my high school students and I were reading Voltaire's chapter about the ideal society, El Dorado, in his novel Candide, it started me thinking about a perfect society. What would that be like? After all, it's Thanksgiving week, and we are celebrating the ideal society that the Pilgrims hoped they would create here in America. I also started thinking about other perfect societies that have been written about. For example, some of you may remember John Hilton's book Lost Horizon and Shangri-La. Maybe you remember the movie Shangri-La. Or the spiritual group, perhaps, that many of you have studied about, where they believe that Jesus was raised by the Essenes. A lot of people believe that, ideal society. Basically, these utopian societies are pretty much all the same. They all believe in religious freedom, no poverty, people are sincerely walking the talk, the government is there to help organize things based on the laws that are by the people and for the people, and everything is clean and beautiful, and if there's any problem that anyone has, everyone helps that person, right? Pretty ideal society, wouldn't you say? This all made me think about the great courage that Plato wrote about in his cave allegory. In his classic story, The Cave Allegory, there's a group of people you might remember, and they've spent their entire lives chained inside of a dark cave looking at the back of the cave wall. What they saw back there were the shadows of the real reality that were going on outside. They had based their entire thinking processes and all their living strategies based on the reality of these shadows on the cave that they had been programmed since childhood to believe were reality. Then one day, a few people turned around and they saw the light of day and reality outside. Most didn't understand what they had seen. Fewer still had the courage to get unchained and go out of the cave and check it out. Some of them were 50, 60, 70 years old, and they just could not negotiate this 3D reality out there. For one thing, their eyes were so dilated from being in the dark so long that they couldn't even see as well out there as they did in their comfortable dark cave. Also, they stumbled around in this 3D world because their muscles had atrophied from being there sitting down in the cave all their lives. These people just couldn't figure out how to negotiate this sunlit, three-dimensional enigma out there. So most of them went back inside of their comfortable cave. Now, a few stayed outside and realized what truth was, what reality was. But when they went back into the cave to enlighten their friends, they were considered to be kooks. This illusion versus reality theme is often our dilemma. That's why it was one of Shakespeare's favorite themes. Do we accept our programming that all this material world is the only world there is? Or do we open our minds to a greater reality, the absolute level of reality that Plato, Buddha, Jesus, and so many others have tried to teach us about? There is much more to life than just this material plane. True reality, in fact, is what the world of matter is a reflection of, that higher state of things. In fact, by getting aligned with that higher state, we can actually change our physical reality. A lot of people call that miracles. That's why Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore emphasize so much that by changing our minds, we can change our world. Reality is so much more than shadows on an inner cave wall that we have based, some of us, our whole lives on. And Furthermore, there are ways to create utopian societies based on these truths. Shangri-Las, Eldorados, Essene-type societies like Jesus was raised in, many people think, are examples of that. For many of the pilgrims in the 1600s, that is exactly what they hoped America would be, a land of spiritual freedom where committed people could carve out an ideal society based on eternal truths, absolute truths. We see the same theme in the Moses story. He convinced the chosen ones who were slaves in Egypt that they could have a better life. There was a promised land, a land of milk and honey. It wasn't easy, but with courage and perseverance, they obtained it on the metaphysical level and apparently on the historical level too. A lot of us would like a chance to create an ideal society. Well, it is possible. How about, listen carefully, how about going with me and starting a whole new life? How about that? We can set up our own laws and government and spiritual centers just the way we want. An ideal society of like-minded people. Sure, there'll be hard times and there'll be obstacles, but it will be so worth it. And we can escape the 4 Ps, as many people call them: pollution, perverse laws, people run by their egos and not God, and petty values. We can start all over, you all over, and make it work this time. We won't pollute our rivers and our air. We won't destroy our rainforest. People will be peaceful, happy, educated, and self-sufficient. And there is room for 102 of us. 102 on the next spaceship to Mars. There will, of course, be uncertainties and hardships, but it will be worth it because we'll have the freedom to arrange things our way in the new world. We will be pilgrims in a new land. Imagine. Now, we don't know much about living on Mars. It may be a challenge at first to figure out how to grow food, for example, but we won't have to deal with any more of the corruption and lawlessness and lack of spiritually committed people. Just imagine. It'll be a 4-month journey in cramped quarters, yes. You'll be eating K rations, but then most of you who were here during Katrina know all about that. True. No large group has ever made that journey before. And honestly, I have to admit, you will no doubt suffer at times, and probably some of us won't make it. The conditions will be harsh and a little scary at times, because after we arrive, we'll have to figure out how to survive in this unknown terrain, how to even build houses. But I'd like for all of you to seriously consider the advantages of starting all over and colonizing a new planet and beginning our ideal society together. It's probably a one-way trip, so think carefully, but it'll be so worth it. How many of you would sign up to be pilgrims on this voyage to create a perfect society? There's room for 102. Come on, I don't see. Thank you, Elaine. I figure there are about, well, this is Thanksgiving week, probably not, but about 45 or 50 of you here today. So some of you will be able to bring family members too, because there's a place for 102. Please raise your hand again if you want to go. Okay, thank you. Okay. I imagine, I'll talk about this next week too, and we'll get more people. I imagine most of you by this point see where this is going. There were 102 pilgrims in the early 1600s who signed up to come to this unknown wilderness, America, inhabited by unknown creatures, certainly as strange as E.T. is to us. It was unknown territory that no one knew how to cultivate for edible crops or how to deal with in any way. Thank goodness the Indians helped them. The Indians' help, did you know, was the reason why the Pilgrims had enough food where they could actually be thankful and have the first Thanksgiving meal together. It was the Indians. A minister, Reverend John Robinson, talked to these 102 people, just like I just talked to you. They were willing to suffer for a meaning and a purpose. They were on a mission. They all believed in something. I wonder how many of us would stand up this morning and say, I'm ready to go, or even next week after thinking about it, I'm ready. I'm ready to pursue my spiritual values and my ideas of the way an ideal society should be. I'm ready to take that one-way trip to Mars on that spaceship. I'm not sure I would. It would be a tougher journey than any I have ever experienced, and probably tougher than anything most of you have ever experienced too. Well, this Thanksgiving, we have much to be thankful for. We've been talking about a lot of those things this month, and I'd like to add to those things in that list the tough pilgrims who left all security and often their friends and families to come here and carve out a new life that we have inherited. Those pilgrims were not soft people. It takes great, tough people to carve out a great nation. And it takes tough people to make a great life. We often need to be tough to manifest our highest selves. If I were to ask you to go with me on this journey to an unknown planet like Mars, just like Reverend John Robinson did to those pilgrims, do you know what kind of commitment it would be? We would be leaving next week, and we would be traveling through the rest of December, January, February, and most of March. We'd be hungry, we'd be weak, some of us would be sick, and some of us would die. But we would pick our leaders on that boat, and those leaders would be, of course, one of us, and we would elect them to serve for a time, and we would follow their leadership when we got there. That became the model for what we have in our country today. Remember that those pilgrims were leaving a country where they were ruled by kings and queens. This was a huge thing. If we are to evolve spiritually, we have no choice but to be tough today, like those original pilgrims were. We have to want something so badly that we're willing to make sacrifices to get it. The thing we have to want to do so badly is to evolve as human beings. It is the only way we will survive as humans, as Americans, and as world citizens. And that is one of the things I think we should be exceedingly grateful for this Thanksgiving. The people who have gone before us and paid the price for this opportunity that we all have. The opportunity to evolve in a free country and to have the spiritual tools that we all do, which teach us how to manifest heaven on earth. We have those tools here at Unity. But we need to be tough. Maybe we don't need to be tough on the outside these days, but we need to be very tough on the inside sometimes. When we have those human impulses to want to take the low road, the easy way out, to follow the crowd, we need to be tough. The difficult journey is the journey within, but we should be thankful for the outward framework that makes this possible in our country. Actually, when you think about it, we're building a new world every single day in our lives, within us and outside of us. Can we be as tough as those pilgrims and create our heart's desire out of the unknown? Doesn't it feel like the unknown sometimes? Yes, we can. We can build a whole new life, a whole new world around us. It may at times seem as tough and challenging as being pilgrims on a boat going to America in the 1600s. I feel that way sometimes, or going on a rocket to Mars. But it is so worth it. We have the chance to be free, happy, to learn how to love unconditionally, and be all that we can be. We can manifest on earth as it is in heaven. That means utopian lives. That is the result of embracing Christ consciousness, cultivating the ability to love unconditionally, and aligning ourselves with the eternal laws and truth, capital T. The human impulse in us finds fault. It looks at the things around us and it finds fault with just about everything. You know these people. You know this part of yourself. That human part that projects its negativity out there onto others and acts from ego, criticizing others so our egos can feel better than they are. Let me tell you a story about the human impulse. There was a woman named Ethel. Ethel would often pray for things. She prayed for a new job. It was a burning desire in her, and she got that new job. As soon as she started working there, she started complaining about it. The job is awful, my coworkers are impossible, my boss doesn't know what he's doing. Friends would often say to her, "Hey, aren't you grateful to have this job?" She would answer, "Oh, it would be perfect if my boss weren't so difficult and the workers so negative." The job was actually like Ethel's life. She prayed for a new home. She wanted a small house in a safe part of town with a little garden in front, more than anything. Finally, she got it, but her negative human impulse was so crisis-oriented that she complained even as she was moving into her new home. There were so many problems, so much to do. So much was wrong with that house. I'm telling you an extreme case because we all have a bit of Ethel in us. We need some R&R from our negativity. We need some quality moments of counting our blessings, appreciating the good in things and the good in people. If we get a wonderful new job, we need to enjoy that job and shine in it. If we have a new relationship or friend, we need to appreciate them. We need to focus on the good for our own good. When we find ourselves being like Ethel and seeing mainly the negative parts of everything, we need to commit to dealing with our negativity. We need to wrestle with it until we see the blessings in it. If we can't see the good in the moment, we can know through our faith that it will eventually become apparent that everything we encounter can at least be grist for the mill to grow from, if we allow it to be. If you were a store owner, once a year you would take inventory, right? You would go through your store and you would count every single individual item. Sounds terribly boring, but that's what they do. Well, this is common practice in business. It's a common practice even for a home, for insurance purposes. It needs to be a common practice in our lives to take a spiritual inventory so that we can see all of our blessings. I'm going to ask you for just a moment to look back on your life, not just at the things that are in your life or in your home right now, but things over your entire life that you have to be grateful for. Ways that God has worked in your life, times when you couldn't see the good in the event at the time, but later did. Think about that for just a minute. And just think, if you had had faith during those times when you couldn't see the good, you wouldn't have suffered so much when you went through those rough times. It's easy to look back and think, oh yeah, well that helps you now, but you suffered then. Someone once said, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me, my divorce. When my husband just up and left me after 25 years, it turned out to be the best thing in my life. I thought that I had turned to God before, but I really turned to God during that time. I went into a deeper level of spiritual consciousness than I would ever have done without that event. I will never be the same because of it. A real blessing because it transformed my life for the better. End of quote. When you are going through your spiritual inventory, keep in mind the following 4 steps. First, when a problem comes up, golden key it. That means that you're going to look past the problem and think about God instead. You're going to say, God, I have this mountain in front of me. I'll tell you the truth, with my human eyes and my human impulse, I don't know how to give thanks for this particular thing. But I also know in faith that good can come of it. If I choose, golden key it. 2, get rid of anger, get rid of fear and resentment. The moment you see it come up, when doing inventory in your life, consider these things out of date. You know, on a shelf, if you're doing inventory and these things are out of date, nobody's going to buy them. So they're out of date. Take them off the shelves. Throw away everything that's out of date. It's just taking up space in your life. Old ways of dealing with people, negativity, your old material value system, throw them away. If you find you're having trouble doing so, get help. There's plenty of help. A lot of help right around here. 3, as you take your spiritual inventory, ask yourself if you have forgiven every single person you think has injured you in some way. And then do it. If you do that, you will access incredible peace and joy. And be grateful that you know the spiritual law of forgiveness, which will change your life. 4, realize as you're taking inventory that everything comes from the divine, from God. I want to share with you a story that happened in 1808. It's the story of a famous musician, Franz Joseph Haydn. They were giving a grand performance of his wonderful musical work, The Creation, in Vienna. The composer himself was there. He was very weak. In fact, after that appearance, Haydn only lived another year. He was brought in there in a wheelchair. When he came into the room, the whole orchestra started playing this wonderful rendition of And There Was Light. The audience gave him a standing ovation. With his trembling, old, and feeble body, Haydn stood up, raised his arms, and with his last bit of energy said, "No, no, no, not for me. This came from heaven through me." Then he fell back into his wheelchair and had to be rolled out of the auditorium. But everyone got the message that everything comes from God. When we are at our best as human beings, we're making that inner journey like the pilgrims did their external journey. We are creating an inner utopia that will then manifest in our physical lives because it attracts like kind to us. Plato said, "A great mind is a grateful mind that attracts to itself great things." Gratitude is absolutely magnetic in attracting God's good. May you be full of gratitude this Thanksgiving for all of your many, many blessings, material and spiritual. Be grateful for the pilgrims who, despite all their hardships, founded this great country. Be thankful, too, for this New Orleans Unity Center. This November is its 92nd birthday. One of our members went to a Unity service in the Gulf Coast last week. I won't say which one it was, but they had to meet at the bar of a restaurant for their service, for their Sunday service. We are so fortunate to have this beautiful building and these beautiful grounds. We're fortunate to have a board led by Bert Lattimore. Bert, would you raise your hand? And Renee Lattimore. Bert's engineering background and commitment to Unity keep this building standing, I can assure you, and in good working order and beautiful. We have wonderful classes led by very committed Unity members. We have teachings that you can't get anywhere else. We have amazing music, Mike and Katrina. We can be grateful for so much, and this attitude of gratitude will attract even more abundance in mysterious ways. We've always said this church has a little pink cloud over it. For some reason, everything just works out right. So happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Happy birthday, Unity. And a big thank you to each one of you who are here today. You obviously care about transforming yourselves and becoming a part of what we care so much about. Learning how to truly manifest the Christ consciousness in our daily lives. Our Sangha here is like a team climbing a spiritual mountain. One of us may slip from time to time, and the human part comes out in us. But by being connected to one another, we can easily pull each other back up. I see it happening every week. We are so grateful for each one of you for being here and for supporting the whole. Amen.